Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the best pickup line that I ever encountered. When I was a grad student at Stanford, I was working on my second master's thesis on Orientalism in French music, and there was a girl, a woman, who was also working on her thesis, and she wanted one of the books that I had. And so she got my name through the library because she knew that I had it, and she called me up, and she said to me very seductively, "Why don't you come on over to my place and check out my clavichord?" And I thought to myself, how could I resist that invitation? So, of course, I went over to her place, not knowing what to expect, and lo and behold, she had a clavichord. Turns out her sister built them. That must be some family at Thanksgiving, huh? So I checked out her clavichord. It worked. It had bebung. You could do all kinds of things with it. It was fascinating. Turned out that she was a music student and she was studying pre and post tonal music, to which my natural response is, why are you leaving out all the music anyone cares about? Really. However, all of that is a long way of introducing this object, the Robert Kraft Cube. 44 CDs of absolutely splendid pre and post tonal music, because that's what Kraft was interested in. So there you go. Robert Kraft was one of those, he was an event, one of the most important musical figures of the 20th century, but also one of the quietest. He's famous as Stravinsky's amanuensis, the guy who turned Stravinsky onto his late period interest in 12-tone music, for which he's never been forgiven by people who like Stravinsky's earlier music. But he was also a great devotee of the Second Viennese School of modern American avant-garde music from the first half of the 20th century, of all types and of all stripes. And his concern was, he originally studied to be a conductor. He was a brilliant musician and just a wonderful person. Just a cool guy. I had the great pleasure to meet him several times in his, later life. And he was wonderful. He was absolutely wonderful. It was a pleasure and an honor to have known him. And so seeing this come out is really splendid. And there's something else that I need to mention in connection with this, because this consists of, like I said, pre and post tonal music. We like to dump on the major labels, and rightly so in terms of their marketing and craziness, but at certain times, they did amazing things. At one point in its career, Sony, which was CBS or Columbia at that point, was devoted to the cause of contemporary music up to a point where, they have to make money. It's a business, right? But they let this relatively unknown man, very unknown man, conduct the complete works of Webern and just about the complete works of Schoenberg, all the weird stuff that no one had heard before, and tons of other things that we'll get to. Never mind, the late stuff that Stravinsky didn't conduct himself. That's the cats playing with their scrunchy toys, in case you're wondering. Anyway, they allowed him to do all this. And yes, I've seen people whine and bitch and moan that they didn't have a lot of time, that as a result there were certain mistakes. In fact, he's very honest in his notes about how in a couple of the Webern pieces, like there's a wrong note here, there's a little mistake there. That's true of every performance in the world. But Robert Kraft was a perfectionist, and his main concern, he was not a conductor who was interested in the emotionalism of the Romantic period. He was trying to set down for posterity what the composer wrote as accurately and completely and expressively honestly as he could, because he was not a cold person by any stretch of the imagination, and he was not like a Pierre Boulez type, not at all. But he had that feeling of precision in everything he did, and accuracy and respect for the creative process and what the composers wrote. And he brought that to bear on this strange range of repertoire. He knew what he could do. He didn't try to do anything else. He wasn't out to do a Mahler cycle. He wasn't doing the Tchaikovsky symphonies. He did this repertoire. And I just think that is so incredible incredibly admirable. To know what you can do, to have that sense of your abilities in yourself, to have the dedication to the cause, and he had a record label in Columbia that was willing to let him do it up to a reasonable budgeted amount. And we have no cause to complain about it. We really don't, because here's the result. They did it, and it's marvelous. So let's just take a look inside and see what's here, and I'll turn you loose on it. And I'm telling you right away, if you don't like Schoenberg, if you don't like atonal music, and if you don't like Gesualdo and Schutz and earlier music, you're probably not going to want this. But it is such a collector's item, such a wonderful moment. And I know that the production here has been subsidized by the Robert Kraft Foundation that he left when he passed away. And at least I assume it has been, and rightly so. A wonderful, wonderful thing to be subsidized. But please, Robert Kraft Foundation, keep it in print. I mean, I don't know if you have any control over that, but do what you can to see that this legacy remains available. Because otherwise, what's the point, right? I mean, seriously. So we've got 44 CDs, and it really does sort of come in clumps. But let's just go through it in the bookie here, disc by disc. And I'm just going to tell you who the composers are, because it's really kind of amazing. And we'll go through it that way. We have an alphabetical list of composers. So let us start at the beginning. You get a batch of Bach cantatas, which we don't need to go into, but of course the Ricercar from the Musical Offering, which was orchestrated by Webern, and we have his Schoenberg's Bach transcriptions, which are amazing, and those are all here, along with a couple Bach cantatas. We're not going to quibble about period this or period that. What's amazing is that it got done at all in the 1950s and 60s. Next, Berg, 3 pieces for orchestra. The 3 movements from the lyric suite. 4 symphonic excerpts from Lulu. You know, Kraft conducted the premiere, at least the U.S. premiere, of the incomplete Lulu, the complete opera. And we have the 5, the Altenburg Lieder, and the 7 early songs, and the chamber concerto, and Der Wein. So that's Berg. Then Boulez, Le Marteau sans Maître. Boulez. He did Boulez before Boulez did Boulez. Isn't that nifty? From 1958, he did Boulez. I mean, I don't even like Boulez, but I admire this tremendously. I really do. Then there's the Brahms Piano Quartet in the Schoenberg orchestration with the Chicago Symphony, which is maybe the most exciting thing that Kraft ever did. Anyone who thinks that he was a cool cat, listen to that performance. It's a smoker. It's the best version of that out there, easily. They're all just going crazy on it and having a blast. Then we've got Debussy, Le Chanson de Bilitis, the theatrical version with narration, Vera Zorina doing the narration. And then we've got lots of Gesualdo. Kraft was fascinated by Gesualdo's style, which was so harmonically advanced and crazy and disturbing, and which Stravinsky, turned into one of his works. He did his Gesualdo transcriptions, probably thanks to Robert Kraft, and doing these like madrigals and sacred works and other things, just so that we know, one of the madrigal singers back in the days of the 50s was Marilyn Horne, before her career took off. It's just wonderful to have these pieces. There's such a sense of discovery about these performances, and they're beautiful performances. I mean, intonationally fantastic, extraordinarily paced, clear and clean of diction. They're really marvelous. They just go to show that, musical values are musical values. And it doesn't matter whether you're a period this or a whatever that, it's musical value. Clarity, proportion, rhythm, intonation, some qualities are eternal. So there's Gesualdo. Then Hindemith's Herodiade. Yes, the complete Herodiade ballet thing, whatever that is. And then the Monteverdi Vespers. I mean, Monteverdi Vespers from what was recorded, 1967 or something like that, right? Does it say? It should say. It was saying. But anyway, yeah, it was sometime like that. Long time ago. Let me see if it... it has dates for most of these things. Yeah, Los Angeles. It just says Los Angeles. It doesn't have a date, but it was, I think, 67. I can look it up if you're curious. The thing that's so remarkable about that, there were early music people who were starting to do this music. But Robert Kraft was Robert Kraft, and he was doing it through the lens of a contemporary music guy. And I like the performance very much. I really do. Then we've got the Mozart Grand Partita, which is kind of curious, coupled with the C minor piano concerto with Glenn Gould, I believe. And then tons and tons of Schoenberg. And I don't have to go into what of Schoenberg. He did virtually everything here except for Gurrelieder, and some of the other like really crazy big pieces. But he did A Survivor from Warsaw. You've got 3 pieces for chamber orchestra, 3 satires, all kinds of lieder, 5 pieces for orchestra, the Begleitungsmusik zu einer Lichtspielszene. Yeah, the accompaniment to a cinematographic scene. And his chamber symphonies, both of them. That weird Handel transcription, or Mann actually, known as his cello concerto, which is completely nuts. And let's see, Die Glückliche Hand, and Piero Lunaire is in here, and Erwartung, and Herzgewächse, along with Peleus and Melisande is here. The piano concerto, that's also with Glenn Gould. And let's see, the Ode to Napoleon Bonaparte, Piero Lunaire, we said that. Serenade, choral works, the suite in the old style, the variations for orchestra, Verklärte Nacht, the violin concerto von heute auf morgen, the wind quintet, which he conducts, which you'd better. I hate that piece, it's horrible. But, a lot of this stuff is not horrible, obviously, with some amazing performers, too. Again, I don't want to get into all those details, because the reason to get this is to get it for what it is, for Kraft and for the historical importance of it. Then we've got Schubert German dances, arranged by Webern. Heinrich Schütz, a bunch of pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things by Schütz. And then Stockhausen, Zeitmasse. Yeah, okay. And then lots of Stravinsky. A lot of the Stravinsky that Stravinsky himself did not conduct, and that became part of that complete Stravinsky edition. And then Varese. Everything by Varese, virtually, except Amérique. That is the only thing here that I see missing. Otherwise, you get Arcana, density 21.5, Désert, hyperprism, Integral, ionization, Octandre, Offrandre, and they throw in the poem Électronique. That doesn't get conducted, it just gets done. And we've got the complete Webern. Now, this is kind of annoying because the complete Webern was released separately just a little bit ago. And here it is again. So you're going to get that again. And if you have the Stravinsky complete edition, you're going to get those things again. But wow, what an amazing legacy this is. For all that sometimes the sound is limited, sometimes the orchestra could have been a little better, maybe here and there. You can trust Robert Kraft. You're in good hands. You're always in good hands with this guy. As a guide to this music. And I will say, there's some works like the Schoenberg Violin Concerto and some other things. Nobody ever did them better. He makes such lucid sense of music, which so many people consider to be, very difficult or impenetrable. It is difficult, but it's not impenetrable. And that's the point. Give it some time, give it a chance, and you're in great shape. Now, he is also competing a bit with himself, because he redid a lot of the Schoenberg stuff for Naxos. And some other things as well. And Stravinsky, of course, he's done over and over again. But he was never, particularly persuasive in the early Stravinsky stuff. It was the late stuff that he really knew and I think loved and felt a proprietary interest in projecting. So here we have it. It's a connoisseur set, no question about it. But I am a major connoisseur, and this is the kind of thing that makes one happy to be alive. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.